Thanks for joining us today. I've seen some of you in our past webinars. It's nice to have you back. This is the final webinar in our Heritage Recovery Fund series, and that means that we will be uploading them all to the Sporting Heritage YouTube and our page on the website, which we'll share with you from next week. This is a really exciting webinar. I think it'll be really valuable to everybody at the moment. So I'll be handing over to Joe Boardman here, who is a social enterprise consultant and is the business development manager at Sporting Heritage. I'll mute myself, but we'll speak to you a bit later on.
Thanks, Kate. Morning, everybody. So just before we start, I am going to say I'm downstairs today. Sometimes I am downstairs when I do my Zooms, but I'm downstairs today because the Wi-Fi was bad. So if you see random dogs walking past, I do apologise. It's just I'm not in the nice clean-cut room with nothing at the back. I've got dogs wandering around. So yes, this is a whistle-stop tour, and from my perspective, trying to do fundraising for digital in an hour is a huge ask. But just to let you know, the foundations for fundraising for digital are no different to fundraising for any other project, really. It's just, you need to think about your research, you need to plan, you need to prepare before you're developing your projects, your programs, or applying for your grants or developing those relationships. It doesn't matter whether it's virtual fundraising, whether it's physical fundraising, and also you've got to think about the mix of funding and investment that you want within your organisation. I suppose the difference with digital opportunities and digital developments at the moment is we've all been thrown into this digital world because of the pandemic, mostly in order to survive, because if we don't develop digital offers, digital projects, digital products and programs, then we're going to struggle to engage with audiences. But just to quote somebody from the heritage sector, he said something at a conference, it was a Sporting Heritage conference actually. She said, we've all had to embrace digital technology as a mechanism of engaging with our audiences, donors, clients and customers during the pandemic, whether we liked it or not. It was a necessity to survive. And I think that has been the case for a lot of organisations and individuals, but I also think it's been a good thing. Because I think if there's one thing that it's shown is we don't need to physically do things, we can do things virtually and still get things done. And it's given us new opportunities to engage with global audience as well, and get people involved. So I'm just going to shut up on this slide and I'm going to move swiftly through. What I will say to you is don't be scribbling stuff down today, because all these slides, and there are a lot of them, and the notes as well that you'll see me reading off, because I've been scribbling away, writing all these different notes, I will be sending through to Kate, so you will get them. Only write things down today if you're desperately urgent and want to get in touch with some of the organisations or the websites or the individuals that I mentioned. But if you can wait until I've PDF'd everything, then just sit, relax and enjoy. So this is the agenda. It's a bit packed, as you can see. I'm going to look at different types of funding and fundraising. I'm going to look at from asking to earning, and I have got a pros and cons sheet. I'm not going to go through it today. I'll just briefly talk about it, but you will get that in the PDF. It's just to bear that in mind. I'm going to talk about what it is that you need. I'm going to talk about the do's and don'ts of fundraising. Then we'll look at current funding opportunities, and I can see you all going, woohoo, because that's what everybody's interested in, where the money is. Then I'm going to talk about a few other things. So making the pitch, thinking about donors, thinking about business support, sponsorship, quickly looking at crowdfunding, because that's been one of the things during the pandemic that quite a few organisations have maximised on. Then some case studies that will be relevant to you. Then I'm going to talk about digital fundraising as well. So looking at some digital fundraising tips, general fundraising tips, and the don't reinvent the wheel. Some useful info, and then final Q&As. If you feel the urge that you need to ask something in between the slides, either A, use the chat function that Kate will be managing, or B, you can raise your hands and go woohoo, and we can, you know, see if we can answer the questions. But what I am going to try and do is see if we can do the Q&A right at the end if possible. But if there's a burning question, please do ask. So that's it in a nutshell. That's what we're going to try and get through. So the housekeeping, obviously, ask questions and interact with others. The one thing that I would say about this, and during the pandemic generally, is that I think not only the heritage sector, but the sector generally has shared lots of information. So if you've done things today that you think might be useful for other people that are on this webinar, please, please, please stick it in the chat function, share it, if you don't mind sharing it. And also, you know, pass on websites, etc., talk to each other, because I think that's the one time from my perspective that you can learn so much. You learn from each other. That don't reinvent the wheel. You know, basically find out what other people have done and see if it'll work within your environment. If you've got any questions after this webinar, you can either email me, and my email will be across the presentation slides, or you can follow me on social media and Sporting Heritage, and the details are there on that slide. And hopefully that's that. So me, very quickly, over 20 years working with charities, museums, heritage, creative, social enterprises, business. These are some of the current clients that I've got at the moment. So obviously Sporting Heritage, I do their business development, but I've been working with Justine and the team for probably 5+ years now. I think Alan from Museum Development Yorkshire was due to be on this webinar, so I don't know if Alan's here, but I do some work every now and again for Museum Development Yorkshire. I'm a business advisor for Prosper North. So as you can see, lots of different organisations and individuals that I work with. The majority of my work is on income diversification, governance, business planning, partnership development, and also business engagement. So looking at that corporate social responsibility, sponsorship, etc. So looking outside of the normal grant things. So from the questions that you filled out when you signed up for this webinar, these are some of the areas that I identified. So a lot of people wanting fundraising ideas. I'll try my best. A couple on creating budgets and projects from ideas that you've got. So again, the information that we'll go through will hopefully help you to think about that. Digital marketing top tips. Well, I'm going to be doing fundraising top tips, and I'll also be doing some digital fundraising top tips. So hopefully that will help. Useful case studies. Yep, got some of those. Diversifying income options. I'll be talking about different types of income. How to effectively engage investors and sponsors. I'm going to be doing something on making the pitch a little bit later. Where to find funding for digital projects? Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Where's the digital project money tree? I'd like to say there is one, but at the moment there isn't. But there is a tree that you can get funding from. Just have to be a little bit creative. And fundraising top tips. So yes, hopefully I've got all the areas that you were all thinking about, but if not, we can do it at the Q&A. I am going to try my best to answer as many questions. So let's get started. So from asking to earning. So really, when you're looking at fundraising and the different types of fundraising for projects, whether they're digital or otherwise, you've got these 5 key streams, really. You've got the first one, which is gift and philanthropy. So that's really thinking about individual donors, individual giving, philanthropy, whether that's corporate or high wealth. Also looking at sponsorship, friends of groups, community events, that sort of thing. And that's really the asking bit. So we're going to talk about that later with the making the pitch when we're asking people for things. But also some of you might have friends of groups or know of friends of groups, and you might run community events. So it's the asking element. The gift and philanthropy is about looking at individuals as sympathetic to your cause and looking at where you can source investors and supporters who are sympathetic. Do you have online donation options as well? I'm going to talk about digital fundraising a little bit later on. Do you have regular donors? Do you have members who pay a fee? The one thing that I will say about gift and philanthropy, you need to consider how you value and appreciate your donors. It's a little bit like us when we go out and buy things. It's customer care. So it's thinking about how you can value those donors and those supporters that you've got and appreciate the contribution that they're making to your organisation. with the gift and philanthropy, one of the questions that I always ask people is, how many of you use social media to find out about individuals and organisations or businesses that might get involved with your organisation? Because if you don't, you're missing a trick. I use LinkedIn massively to virtually stalk businesses and individuals. And I'm going to hold my hands up and say, I have no qualms about doing that. I do it because LinkedIn provides me with information that I would not find out about those individuals or those organisations if I just went on their website. It's a really, really useful tool for finding out about individuals and organisations, what their likes are and what their vision are, what their values are. And it's not only individuals, but it's also organisations. Sporting Heritage has a LinkedIn profile, but lots of big business have LinkedIn profiles and the individual members, and you can find out who's who and do that virtual stalking. And the other thing that you can do with social media platforms is get free things. So again, I use LinkedIn. I'm on lots of groups and I will ask for things like support or free things. I am on a business network here in Yorkshire called the Yorkshire Mafia. Now, as weird as that name is, the Yorkshire Mafia has about 21,000 members in their group. And I know if I set up a thread and go on that group, I can ask for things and I will get at least a dozen responses back from people wanting to help me and support me. So think about how you use social media. The second one, which I think you'll all be used to, is grant funding and thinking about the grants that are out there for different projects. So the grant funding that's out there, what you can access will be dependent on your legal structure, the size of your organisation and what you're looking for the money for, because lots of grant funders have different criteria, have different priorities that they will fund. Obviously, digital might be one of those. And there are lots of different types of funders out there. So you've got the trusts and foundations, there's lots of trusts and foundations. You've also got the main funders as well, like the lottery funders that we all know of, Heritage Fund, Arts Council, etc. But within your locality, you will also have organisations called community foundations that manage a lot of the local and regional funding pots that are out there as well. And you can find out where your local community foundation is by going on to UK Community Foundations, and that will tell you where your local community foundation is. So when you're thinking about grants, you've got to understand that grants are usually restricted because they're project based. They're usually time limited because, again, they're project based. You can get some core costs through full cost recovery, but also you will have specific outputs that you need to achieve and criteria that you've got to achieve. So you really need to think about whether you align with that fund that you're going for. Don't chase the money for chasing the money's sake. Make sure that it aligns with what it is that you want to do. And also, some grants will have specific deadlines because the trustees may only meet a certain number of times a year. So that's grants. You've then got social investment. I'm going to quickly skim over this because I don't know whether any of you will have accessed social investment. Social investment is really seen as the last brick in the financial jigsaw for many organisations, purely because everybody wants to get grants or donations in before they look at repayable finance. We've seen a lot more on repayable finance during the pandemic. There's lots more social investments come out to help organisations keep themselves afloat. And there are lots of social investors out there like Key Fund, like the Charity Bank, like Unity Trust, Triodos. But again, social investment is only there if you are able to pay it back. So if you're able to generate an income, a surplus and a profit, then you can think about social investment. The good thing about social investment is that you don't have to jump through the hoops that you have to jump through for grants. Because basically, if somebody can see that you can pay it back, then and it fits with their criteria as an investor, then they'll probably invest in you. So that's what I'm quickly going to say about that. But again, all this information is in the notes that I'll be sending out. The structured market, which is contracts. So that's if anybody of you've got contracts with, say, local authorities or other organisations to deliver a service. That is very much based on, you say you can deliver it for this price, you sign a contract that says you can deliver it for that price, you've got to deliver it for that price and deliver on the outputs and deliver on the timescales. It's very, very focused and structured, and it's not as flexible as grant funding. Grant funding, the funders want you to have the money. contract, if you don't deliver, then they may ask for the money back. And this has happened before. So again, if you're looking at contracts to deliver a digital project, then think about what you're getting into and think about why you're doing it and if there are any other options rather than that. But if you've got a good contract that works for you and you can generate some surplus and profit, great. Open market, so that's really trading. So that's thinking about any products or services that you offer, events that you do, performances, or any intellectual property that you've got where you can actually get unrestricted monies in there. So that's really about your unrestricted money that you can get through trading. It might be a shop, it might be a cafe if you've got a cafe on site, it might be you do training and charge for that training. Once you've got that unrestricted monies in, then you can do with it what you will. You know, if you wanted a team away there in Barbados, then if you feel that's a justifiable thing to do, then you can do it because you've got no funder saying, no, you can't do that. So they're sort of the main 5 really that go from asking right the way through to earning. And within there, across that is sort of the digital side of things as well. So digital fundraising tends to span a lot of those areas, and I am going to talk about that a little bit later. So that was a very, very quick whistle-stop tour on that. These are the pros and cons. So these are the ones that we talked about, and then we talked about, I said that I'd mentioned some of the pros and cons. So I'm not going to go through all this because we'll be here for a whole hour going through all this, but I just wanted you to have this information. So when you're looking at the funding for your project, you can make an informed choice about which of these is right or which mix of these is right, dependent upon the project that you're wanting to do. So you will get this information and you can utilize this information when you're looking at the funding or the fundraising that you're planning to do for your project. So what do you need? That's the question. I said to you earlier about don't chase the money just for money's sake. We've all done it. I'll hold my hands up. I've done it. I've made the organisation that I work for, I've stretched the vision and the objectives in order to meet a funder's need. But it's not the best thing to do. I think the one thing that we've had during lockdown is we've had the ability to think, review, reflect, revise and plan. Moving forward, I think what we are going to find from not only funders but investors as well is that you need to be very clear and focused about what you require funding for. And to be honest, it's best practice anyway. You need to be able to evidence the need of what you want to do now more than ever. You need to show that there's best value for money. And the one thing that everybody wants at the moment is to see that there's collaboration with others. Because again, funders, investors, sponsors all want best value. They all want a bigger bang for their buck. So you've got to be very, very clear on what it is that you want, and make sure that you're able to look at both your quantitative and qualitative measurements as well. So the bums on seats, but also then the impact that it makes on the individuals and the communities that that project is set up for. So what do you need to do? The first thing you need to do is find where the money is. So once you've decided what your project is, you need to find what kind of money that you want for that project. And I use a variety of different search engines. I'm also on a variety of different fundraising e-bulletins and funding updates. I also use Google Alerts. So every day I get a myriad of Google Alerts on different fundraising events out there. I can see, I don't know if the chats, if there's anything coming up about that. If people use specific funding search engines that they find useful, please put it in the chat function. I'm going to be talking about some of them in the useful information at the end. But, you know, there are the usual suspects. You know, lottery funders send out e-shots. Your local council for voluntary service or voluntary action will send out e-bulletins where you are. NAVCA, the National Association of Voluntary and Community Action, send out e-shots. I would get my wrist slapped if I didn't say that Sporting Heritage send out e-shots with funding updates, purely because I add in the funding updates in there as well, as a friend of mine called John from Community Matters Yorkshire. And the museum development networks. And again, I'm showing and doffing my cap to Alan from Museum Development Yorkshire if he's here, because Museum Development Yorkshire and a lot of the Museum Development networks send out useful funding information. And there are lots of others. And again, I've listed a lot that you can look at. But that's what you have to do first and foremost, is you have to look at where the funding is in the search engine and find different funding that you think is going to be right for the projects that you want, whether it's grants, whether it's looking at digital, whether it's looking at donors, or whether it's community stuff, community fundraising, or it might be social investment. But you need to find that initially. So make sure that you're registered for some search engines or e-shots so you can find out about information that's going to be relevant for your project.
So, I'm sorry to interrupt. We've just had a couple of, I wonder if there's some noise in the back there. People are finding a little distracting. Is that coming from your space?
Oh, it shouldn't be, because I'm on my earphones, but can people hear talking?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. I do apologise for that. Is it making it really difficult for people?
We've just had a couple of comments saying it's a bit distracting, but...
Right. Just bear with me for 2 seconds then, please. Please. Can you turn the television off, please, as well? Apologies, everybody. I do apologise. There's the joys of Zoom and being downstairs. So, hopefully, it should be quieter now. I'm surprised at that. I do apologise. Anyway, hopefully that helps now. So once you've found the different types of funding that are out there, then what you need to do is filter down. So you need to think about the different types of, we've talked about the different types of funding that you're thinking about, and filter down and check the funding criteria to make sure that it's going to fund what you want and that you're eligible. So think about your legal structure as well, because legal structure eligibility is going to be another thing when it comes to looking at different types of funding. And also look at whether you're looking at capital and revenue, and whether the investor or the funder that you're going for will fund, whether it's capital, revenue, or both. I will say at the moment, obviously funding is looking at resilience within the sector, and we're on the second round of Cultural Recovery Fund. Some programs are reopening, so there are programs that are opening at the moment for new projects. But the one thing that you need to think about when you're doing this, which is why I'm saying focus and be very clear about what you do, is that you need to have things planned very well, because there's going to be a lot of competition for funds when they're coming out. So that's filtering. Then focusing. I'll just mention what one of my lottery colleagues said, and she says it constantly to me, is that she does sometimes wish that applicants would read the guidance. I know we're all desperate to get funding, and sometimes we skim through things, but one of the things, and I think funders now are really good at providing very detailed guidance, is that if people read the guidance and answer the questions within the guidance, not the questions that you want to answer, then you've got more chance when it comes to grants. And it's a similar sort of thing with investors as well, and sponsors. I think the emergency funds and the recovery funds have been quite clear in the guidance as to what they want. So I think that's actually streamlined people and made people think very focused on what it is that they do. So again, be very focused and clear about what you need and why you need it. And then the final thing is make sure you keep in touch. If you don't get a fund, if you don't get an application, if you're not successful, or if you're not successful with an investor, ask why. Because if you don't know why, then you can't look at that and think, can I do something differently that means the next time around I'm going to be successful? So keep in touch. And if you are successful, keep in touch, keep in regular contact with them anyway, because then people remember you. And that's the same whether it's a grant funder or whether that's an investor or a supporter or a donor. Keep in touch, appreciate people, appreciate feedback, and it's that sort of relationship development that will help you moving forward, saying thank you, and when you're delivering things and doing things. So that's what do you need, and basically how you go about looking at what it is that you need, and make sure you don't overestimate and don't underestimate the amount of money that you need as well. That's something that's really, really important. So do's and don'ts. Plan, preparation, and priorities. It doesn't matter what kind of funding that you're looking at, you've got to plan, you've got to prepare, and you've got to make sure that you've identified key priorities. it's one of those things where the failing to plan, planning to fail cliche is true. So you need to make sure that you've done all your preparation and you've not just cobbled something together because you want some money. Now more so than ever, you've got to be able to evidence need. You've got to be able to showcase why you're doing it and why there's a need. You've got to showcase that you're the best individual or organisation to do it. And you've got to showcase the benefits of you doing that. So make sure you do plan, prepare, and identify the priorities that your project is going to deliver against. The next one is case for support and fundraising strategy. I used to do fundraising training for the National Archives, and I used to spend a day doing a case for support and training and a day on fundraising strategy. So I'm going to do it in like 5 minutes, I think, which is going to be interesting. We'll do case for support, fundraising strategy, and we'll also then look at successful bid writing and digital fundraising basics. So, case for support. So the case for support is a document that's going to explain clearly and concisely why you need funding and what you plan to do with it. That's what your case for support is. Pretty simple. You can either use it internally if you're part of a bigger organisation where you need to get the go-ahead from your senior management team, or you can use it externally to help with funders and help with that filtering and focusing the projects that you're doing. But what you need to think about with any case for support is those 5 areas there on the screen. Don't make your case for support War and Peace. It only needs to be a few pages long. It can be for one specific project or a few projects all in one. But the things that you need, the questions that you need to be asking yourself are, what is the need for that project? Why is it needed? You know, what are you trying to address? What are you wanting to do? Then you need to think about what is the solution. So what is your project going to do? How is it going to address that need? If you don't know that, then you're going to struggle. You need to be able to clearly explain what you want the funds for and what those funds are going to address. What's the impact? How are you going to change things with what you're doing? What's going to be different as a result of the work that you've done? And how are you going to know that you've achieved it? So those outputs and outcomes, qualitative, quantitative. Budget, be very, very clear and focused on how much money you need to deliver the work. Don't underestimate and don't overestimate. It's one of those things, make sure that your budget is very clearly identified. And then what added value are you providing? Why should somebody fund you opposed to Joe Blogs that might be a few miles away? Or, you know, it's making sure that you have got that added value, you've got that added benefit that you can provide. What can you do that's better than somebody else? Have you got a track record? Have you got past experience with the funder or the donor or the investor? And what else do you bring to the project? Is there something else that you bring to the project? So that's very quickly, a couple of minutes on case for support. Fundraising strategy. Everybody should have a fundraising strategy. Again, doesn't need to be War and Peace. It defines what you want to do overall as an organisation. It aligns with your business plan, it aligns with your marketing strategy, and it focuses on where you need to go and source and secure funding from. It's really important, and the case for support and fundraising strategy is sort of intrinsically linked. But the one thing that I would say is don't be woolly when it comes to developing the strategy. You need to be, again, very focused, very clear, and know what it is that you want to put in your strategy and make sure that it fits with your wider organisational objectives. So key things that you need to think about are your income options. So what type of funding are you thinking of going for within your either one project or a few projects? Is it a mixed income portfolio, or is it specific grants, or is it sponsors, donors, etc.? That goes in the strategy. Resources. What resources have you got available to you to be able to deliver against the fundraising strategy objectives? There's no point saying you're going to go for X, Y, and Z grants. We all know the amount of time it takes to fill out a grant application form. If you've only got a half-time member of staff that's already got a full-time job to do, or you haven't even got staff, you've got volunteers. So you need to be very clear about what it is you can physically achieve within specific timescales with the resource that you've got, both human and financial. Define your offer. So again, is that focus and clear about what it is that you want to do. Don't just do a scattergun approach. Don't just go for loads and loads of different funding. It's like chucking it up in the air and hoping that something's going to come back. The more clear and focused you are, the more aligned to a funder or an investor's priorities you are, the more chance of success you will have. And the wider context. So think about the wider context and how that might impact on the strategy and what you're planning to do. None of us could have predicted COVID-19. None of us could have predicted what that would do to our organisations. And that's something that we need to try and think about now, is that external environment as well as the internal environment, you know, thinking about what might happen and is that going to impact on what it is that you're planning to do. I know it's very difficult because some of it is that, you know, sort of guessing, but try and think about what's happening from a wider context and whether that's going to have a negative or positive impact on what you're planning. Set targets. Be very clear about setting the targets that you need. So the amount of money that you need, whether it's capital or revenue, what you can raise by when. So the timescales, be very, very smart as what, you know, as to what you're doing. Think about things like if you are getting a loan, then you've got to repay it. So you've got to make sure that you're able to repay it in the timescale there. If you're doing crowdfunding, you've got a finite amount of time to access that crowdfunding. So think about that and think about what you're planning to do. Once you've done this, it's then thinking about the different headings. It's putting the strategies together. I wish I could tell you there's a one size fits all. There isn't. So what I'm going to do in the next 3 slides is just give you a few headline areas. These are good headlines to use, but there are some other areas that you could think about as well, and think about some of the questions that you might want to answer within your own strategy. Every strategy is different. Again, in the chat function, if somebody's got a fundraising strategy that are willing to share, please do. I've got a few from clients. I don't specifically use one size fits all template. I tailor it to each individual client. So if you've got things that you've done before, please share. But these are some headings you might be interested in. So Fundraising Strategy One, there's a few areas there: summary, financial targets, objectives, context, market position. Think about your business plan as well. Does it tie in with your business plan and the headings in your business plan? Number 2, collaboration and partnership, relationship management, your offer, diversity of the income that you're going for, making sure that you've done a SWOT analysis and a PESTLE analysis as well, which is the more external analysis on political, I'm going to get this wrong, economical, technological, legal, and environmental. There's probably another one there. It keeps getting longer, the word. Investment need, analysis of income stream opportunities, and trigger points. And then the final one, risks and risk management, delivery plan, monitoring, measuring impact, budgets, resources, recommendations. So these are all different headings that you could put in your fundraising strategy. And again, your fundraising strategy can be a small few pages, if it's just for one, a couple of projects, or it could be a larger one that aligns with a larger business plan. So again, it's entirely up to you what you do, but these are useful little headings for you to think about. So the next one that we're moving on to is writing that successful bid. So really, writing a convincing funding application it's a great skill to have. I've been working in the sector now for 20 odd years. I don't think I've still got that skill because I'm still learning the jargon. Every single funder has different jargon, as we all know, and it can be quite frustrating if you don't know the language that they like to hear. So a few questions here is, do you know how to prepare for writing a proposal so that you can respond to opportunities quickly and efficiently? Have you got something that's good to go? So have you got a project that's sort of sat on your virtual shelf that's good to go? And so when something comes out from the e-shops that you've all signed up to, you think, great, I can do this. So think about that. If you've got things in the pipeline or things in your mind, start to do that preparation work in readiness for when things, obviously programs like Heritage Fund programs, the big ones are opening February plus. So it's a good time now, it's a good time earlier as well to get things moving. And obviously there are some funds that are still open. Understand how to evaluate whether or not to apply for funding. what I said earlier, don't just go for things because it's out there and you think you can tweak what it is that you do in your mission to suit the funder. Don't do that. Choose what you want to go for. And know how to write in an appropriate and effective style. So again, that comes back to the jargon that certain funders like, but also looking at the guidance notes they provide. The guidance now is more detailed than it's ever been before. So it's, you know, it's really useful. And also, more often than not, you can actually talk to different funders. If it's an investor or a business, if you've done your research, you understand what aligns with them, and also you can chat to them. And, you know, it may be initially when you first go to them, it doesn't fit, you tweak it a bit, you negotiate. So it's thinking about what's going to suit the different funder or the different investor that you're going for. But it's making sure that you have an understanding of what that individual or organisation wants. Because they're going to be asking, more often than not, the what's in it for me question. Why would they support you? With grant funders, it's slightly easier because they've got an amount of money that they need to get out the door to do specific projects. So it's pretty simple. It gets a little bit more complex when it's individuals or business organisations. That's where the negotiation can start. And you've got more of a relationship there developing that. But yeah, it's thinking about how you write things and again, answering the questions. When you're doing things like funding applications, always work on the premise that the person that is reading this knows nothing about you at all. But you answer the questions. If the question asks you a specific thing about, you know, what does your organisation do? Don't give them war and peace. Be very clear, very focused and bullet point. Even if you know the person at the funding organisation, make sure that you fill it out as if it's somebody that you don't know. Because if you miss something out and then you're presuming that they're going to, oh, well, they know me. It doesn't work like that because it goes through different individuals and organisations. If a funder offers you the opportunity to talk to an officer, grab it with both hands. It's a fantastic opportunity to talk because then you start to develop the relationship, not only with the officer, but with the funder. Always remember, at the back of your mind, a funder wants to give you money. They want to get that money out the door, but they want to give it to the best possible organisation. So, and again, with funding bids, relationships are key. It's about developing relationships with the funder. It's about making sure that you're asking them questions, getting them to, if you've got some queries or questions, you can talk to them, and then that logs in the funder that you've been in touch and you've asked different things. Reading the guidance, that preparation, have you got something that's good to go off the shelf? I've literally gone through that in a few minutes. Again, I've got lots of notes that I'm going to pass on to you. Has anybody got any questions about that? No? Okay. I'm moving swiftly on now, and I don't know how many of you do this, but digital fundraising basics. So digital fundraising. So really, digital fundraising is any kind of fundraising activity where you're collecting money digitally, whether it's through a computer, a laptop, a tablet, or a smartphone. And what all these things have in common is that they are ways of people donating without them leaving the house. Again, digital fundraising has got more prevalent during the pandemic. There was a survey done last year, no surprise, there's lots of surveys going out in 2020, but 80% of all donations were made digitally. And there's a likelihood that obviously this is going to increase in 2021. People now have got more used to using their phones, their tablets, their laptops to donate. It's a brave new world. It's not just about having that donate button on your website, and there's loads of different ways to collect and frame donations to your organisation. So if you are thinking about digital fundraising, we're going to talk in the next few slides about the different types and have a think about it, because I think during the pandemic, it's given us an opportunity to look at digital fundraising more and run things virtually. So running virtual events, and people have had to repackage their services and activities. So digital fundraising has become part of the new normal. So as well as the traditional stuff, it's sort of enhanced opportunities. I think, you know, with lots of heritage organisations struggling with their funding and their survival, people went to crowdfunding platforms, people went online, people went to Twitter, you know, Facebook, literally begging for money. And I think it's been a real eye-opener over the past 12 months. So if you haven't used digital fundraising, if you are able to look at it, then it is something that I think can benefit organisations greatly, because you can get passive income from it. If people are clicking on buttons, or if they're doing, you know, some text donations, you're going to get an amount of money that's passive. You're not, other than signing up to something and perhaps paying a fee for something, you're not doing anything. So think about it as a means to get passive income and a new way to generate income for your organisation. Some of it would be restricted because people might want to donate to specific things, but quite a lot of it will be unrestricted. So digital fundraising is a really useful way to supplement the traditional fundraising that we all know. So different types of digital fundraising. So again, I'll quickly go through these, and they are on the slide notes when they come out. Grassroots fundraising phenomena. We all remember the Ice Bucket Challenge. We all remember Captain Tom, who obviously has raised what, nearly 33 million now, and is still up. His page is still up on Just Giving. So those are grassroots fundraising phenomena where it's a viral thing. People have gone out socially and it's gone viral, and people have just liked and aligned to what that cause was. So there are lots of different grassroots fundraising phenomena out there. Single donation, so that could be a one-off donation on your website, or a donation page that you've got on another website. Regular donation, so that could be payroll giving. You might be an organisation that a company uses payroll giving to, or it might be individual monthly donations with your donors. How many of us have had what I call chuggers, the charity muggers that come to the door, or collarers when we used to walk out in our towns and cities? So that's the sort of thing, they're looking for, that regular monthly donation, passive income. So that's one thing, you know, it's trying to get that passive income that comes in every month where you don't have to do anything, gets collected. You might provide a newsletter or an update, but thinking about the appreciation and value. Text donations, sort of quite a new thing, really. Texting a code or a simple phone number, and then you get a set amount, and you capture the details of the donor. So that's just started to come more into fruition. We've all seen it on the reality TV stuff, but it's happening more and more now within the sector. Match giving, so that's really thinking about corporate partners and matching donors. And there's matched giving in the Big Give as well. There are a couple of annual things where if somebody donates to you, then there'll be a matched amount of money coming from government or from different organisations. There are a variety of things out there. Crowdfunding, I'm going to quickly talk about later. Lots of crowdfunding happening over the pandemic, people trying to get money in, more often than not being really, really successful. There are current programmes out there at the moment. The Museums Association is working with Crowdfunding UK and offering MA members an opportunity to set up a crowdfunding page on Crowdfunding UK, and you also get free support to help you develop that if you're new to crowdfunding. And then I'll show those in the case studies. Competitions and lotteries, lots of organisations might have these. They can be quite small. They can actually be quite resource intensive as well. So think about that before you actually get involved with something like that. E-commerce and auctions, if people have done auctions before, selling goods on auctions or tickets. So think about that. And then traditional sponsorship. So thinking about different platforms that you can use that will pay directly to. There are lots of platforms out there at the moment where people can buy things and then it donates to a specific organisation. So there are different mechanisms coming out at the moment. Novel sponsorship methods. Can you get people to do things on your behalf? You know, you see people that will go and they might do firewalking for a specific charity, or they might do a run, a marathon. There are lots of different things out there. The London Marathon, prime example. And then social media giving. I'm sure you've all seen on Facebook, when you do something and you might mention something charitable, there's a donate button that comes up. Do you want to donate? So think about Facebook as well. think about all these different things. If it's something that you're wanting to do, think about your website as your on-site donation conversion point. So if you've on your website, if you've all got a donate button, brilliant, but make sure that it's prominent within your organization and it's not, you know, in a page hidden away somewhere. And then think about off-site donation points, which could be Facebook fundraising, that could be different sponsorship platforms, that could be fundraising pages like Just Giving and text giving. So if this is something that you're wanting to get into, then these are the different things that you should think about and start to consider. And again, I've got some notes here and I've got some additional documents that might be useful for you. So I'm quickly moving on now to what everybody wants to hear about is funding that's currently out there for not just digital, but different projects. So at the moment, obviously, with heritage organisations, the Heritage Fund have still got their small and medium grants open. That's 3 to 10k or 10 to 100k. It opened on the 25th of November and it's an open programme still running. I think it's still running to the end of this financial year. It's basically the last of the money from last year's allocation that they didn't use. You need to think about with this, and this is where you need to think how your digital project helps you become resilient or engage more audiences, because it is about resilience, it's about inclusion and cohesion, and it's about income diversification. So how do you meet community needs? How are you meeting your heritage needs and health and well-being? Early February, they're going to be opening their 100,000+ programs. And what they are saying is if it's not essential for you to go to the small or medium grants, don't wait until they open their new programs in February. Plan the project properly, and that's come from Heritage Fund. Obviously, I'm sure you all know that there's a round 2 of Recovery Fund out at the moment. That closes next Tuesday. And for anybody that's had Recovery Fund round 1 from Heritage Fund, you can apply for up to 50% of your first round application. And it's for a 3-month period from the 1st of April up until the 30th of June. It's about getting your organisation back to the new normal. And so from my perspective, a digital element, as long as it's not seen as a brand new project, it's something that you've been working on or repurposing, a digital element could come into that. But obviously the closing date is next Tuesday, so there's not a lot of time to get that in. So that's the Heritage Fund. Arts Council have got project grants out, which is 1,000 to 100,000, and they are supporting a broad range of activity. So again, digital development, from my perspective, could come into that as long as you look at the criteria that they've got and align it with that engagement, that community development, that heritage marketing and promotion, and also looking at resilience. Resilience, whether we like it or not, is going to be one of the key things for any funder at the moment. So there's a 6-week turnaround for under 15,000 on the Arts Council and a 12-week turnaround for over 15,000. Arts Council have also got Recovery Fund round 2 out. They close again next Tuesday. And any accredited museums or museums working towards accreditation have got to go to the Arts Council rather than the Heritage Fund, unless they had Heritage Fund Recovery Fund round 1. So in addition to that, there are other funders out there at the moment with open programs. So you've got funders like Esme Fairburn. They've got general funds, they've just repurposed their strategy, they've got a new strategy, and one of their key priorities is creative and confident communities. So have a look at that if you think that's something that you might be interested in. Also, Esme do the Collections Fund with the Museums Association, but the deadline's just gone on that. There's also some weird and wonderful organisations out there. So Towns Web Archiving do digitisation funding grants. They were closed for 2020, but their 2021 will reopen. So Joseph Rowntree Charitable Trust does digitisation funding. There's the Charles Hayward Foundation. There's a Pilgrim Trust, the Wellcome Trust, the National Archive do stuff as well around networks. And if you're looking at research stuff as well, there's the Arts and Humanities Research Council. There's Towards a National Collection, which is a massive, massive programme at the moment. Then you've got the Foil Foundation, and you've got the Transform Foundation that does digital stuff. And the final one, which is all about technology, is Nesta as well. So Nesta is the National Endowment of Science, Technology and the Arts. They always have lots of information about funding, especially to do with tech stuff. So they're really useful. As I say, if you're not signed up to eShot, sign up to whether it's a museum development one, whether it's a sporting heritage one, whether it's Community Matters Yorkshire, and that'll give you information about funding that's coming out. All this is going to be on this sheet. That is literally the funding that's out there at the moment. And there, as I say, there are some other open programs, but if you haven't planned, then I would be hanging fire until you're happy with what it is that you're developing. Any quick questions? No. Good. Always good. So quickly, I can't do much on making the pitch because it's one of those where, again, it's dependent on who you're pitching to, and it's thinking about who the organisation is. Have you done that preparation, and do you know what your ask is? So the one thing that I would say about making the pitch is you use your case for support and your fundraising strategy to help you develop a basic elevator pitch. And that's that short summary of what it is you want to do and why you want them involved. So it's thinking about why your project is important, why it should be funded, why they should support you, and why you're the best person to do it, and what difference is their support going to make. When it comes to individuals and donors and businesses, what you want to do is make it so that they feel like they're missing out if they're not supporting you. The benefit is to them to be involved with you, but you've got to be very clear and focused about what it is, what that pitch is. So you're not waffling, you're not reading off a piece of paper, you're passionate about what it is that you're wanting. And you can practice. I've done this, and I've practiced in front of mirrors. I've pitched to dragons, to investors, and it's the worst thing, but I've practiced in front of mirrors, and I've practiced in front of friends and family, and then I've practiced in front of critical friends before I actually go and talk to an individual. I've also then researched that individual, so I know everything about them, you know, even the size of their dog or cat. So it's thinking about the sort of things that you need to do, and be very clear about what it is that you're pitching for. The other thing to remember as well is think about the hook that you want them to get involved with. So it's got to be something that aligns with them, and don't assume that they know things about you. Don't use jargon, don't use acronyms, use everyday language, and as I say, practice. The other thing is verbal body language is great as well. Don't stand there, don't have a monotone voice, don't look down, make sure you're looking at them clearly, and being very passionate. As you can see, my hands are all over the place. I'm very expressive. When I'm passionate about something, my voice raises, my eyes raise, but it's those sort of things to bear those in mind as well. This is a useful little template to think about when you're thinking about pitches, whether that's to donors or sponsors or businesses, is just those key questions. Why do you exist? What do you do? How do you do it? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What are you aiming for? And what do you want from them? If you can answer those questions quite quickly and quite clearly, and they're very focused, then actually, from my perspective, that makes it easier when you're talking to individuals, because they know that you understand what it is that you're good at, and that you're coming to them for a specific thing, and it aligns with what they want. It aligns with what they want to be involved in, and that they can see that you're clearly passionate. And it's also backing it up with evidence as well. So thinking about the evidence to back up why you're the best person to do that. So use the tools like the virtual stalking on LinkedIn, or make sure you research the individual and organisation before you approach. Most businesses and donors hate getting cold called letters asking for money. They want to develop a relationship. Remember that people buy from people. So this is you talking to another individual, regardless of where they're from. They will buy from you as a person. So don't just cold call. Don't just ask for money. find out more about them so that they feel like they're developing a relationship with you. But that's the way that I do it. And it may be, when it comes to things like making a pitch, it might take time, depending on what it is that you're asking for. If it's support, it might be quick. But if you're asking for money, then you need to develop a relationship with them first, where you might only get support. And then 12 months, 18 months down the line, you might get money. If you get money straight away, brilliant. But it's more often than not, you won't. The other thing as well is look at your internal structures. Have you got people within your board of trustees, board of directors, within your staff team that have got good connections and networks? Quite a few organisations have got really fantastic networks internally. They don't use them. So use those before you go out externally. Think of who you've got and your connections and use those first, and hone your pitch with those individuals, because that's like a friendly audience. Okay. So quickly on crowdfunding, have any of you done crowdfunding during the pandemic? No. It's an interesting one. I think crowdfunding sort of came to the fore during the pandemic, and quite a few people did start to do it. And as I say, obviously the Museums Association have done the crowdfunding platform with Crowdfunder. There's quite a few organisations that have done it. It is usually a specific project, specific time, specific goal. It has changed during the pandemic because people have been doing it as an ongoing thing, and I think that's been as a response to people losing money. But normally those are the key things. And with crowdfunding, the things that you need to think about are the platform that you're going to use, whether it's relevant to you as an organisation, the fees that those platforms charge, because some charge, whether it's going to be ongoing, as I said, or one time. So for example, Just Giving, the one with the Captain Sir Tom Moore is still ongoing. Whether the platform actually aligns with your brand and credibility, so it's the right platform for your organisation, and whether you're going to get the right type of donor that's going to go on that platform, and also as well, who's running that platform. Is it a private for-profit company? Is it a not-profit company? Does it matter? Are you not bothered? So you need to think about a few of those things. There are some examples here. As I say, there's Kickstarter, there's Indiegogo. Crowdfunder is the one that's got the relationship at the moment with the Museums Association, Crowdcube, Razoo. Global Giving, huge one, and obviously Just Giving. I suspect everybody knows about Just Giving. When you're doing things like crowdfunding, think about 30% of you. If you achieve 30% of your goal within the first week, you're more likely to succeed. And I think that's slightly skewed because of the pandemic, but there is a lot of planning that goes into crowdfunding. And I think it's not something that's as simple as that Captain Sir Tom Moore putting up and then everybody just donating. You've got to have something that resonates with individuals and organisations, and you've got to market it. So you've got to have that audience. Videos are great. Nobody wants to read these days. Everybody wants to see videos of about 1.5 minutes long or 2 minutes long. Make sure that you link to the website. Make sure you do perks and rewards so that people can get little things that they can buy. I did one a couple of years ago where I bought chocolate to help a young guy set up a chocolate cafe, and I bought some chocolate off him as a perk and a reward, and he's now set up his cafe because he got £15,000 through his crowdfunding campaign. Pictures, everybody wants pictures. Testimonials, if you can get testimonials, say what a fantastic organisation. Different ways for people to contact you. So it's not just on your website, it's actually through your phone, through e-shops, a whole range of social media. Think about all those different things, and making sure that you're asking for the right thing, whether it's not too large and it's not too small. And update, make sure you update people as well. People want to know what their money's done, and what their money's done and how it's helped you deliver what it is that you want to do. So what do you want to crowdfund for? Have you got a great idea? Are you solving a problem? What's the outcome? Have you identified the network, the platform that you're using? Is there a compelling story? And have you got the capacity to do it? And if you have, then yes, do it. just some examples for you. So the National Video Game Museum struggled to get funding during the pandemic, and these, so it went on crowdfunding and it secured 201,000 of an £80,000 target. Phenomenal. Basically, it was going to go under during the pandemic, and this is what it did. These are the ones that are currently on Crowdfunding UK. So you've got the Peace Museum on there, you've got the People's History Museum, you've got Women Make History. There's loads of different projects for heritage organisations on Crowdfunder at the moment. And these are all the ones that are via the MA project, the Museums Association project. National Theatre, how many of us last year actually accessed the National Theatre at home? So they transferred what it is that they do physically, and they developed it online. I know I watched some of the theatre productions online as well, and how they manipulated what they do digitally is that they did this. So they now allow people to still keep involved with them and take part. So they do quizzes that you can take part in. They've got the National Theatre at home, so you can relive the different productions that were out there, and you can show your support. Surprise, surprise, they've got a big button there, text donation, and a sign up newsletter, so they can ask for more money as well. So they've revised and repivoted what it is that they do, so they can get money in digitally as well. Other things that have been done, National Paralympic Heritage Trust, I know Vicky there did a virtual tour, so you can go and see the museum virtually. Brilliant, sat at home, but she also wants you to donate and support them as well. So there's a tour where Vicky's showing you around, and then there's the one that you can go, which is really useful. And I think something like that again is something you can think about, which gets people to engage with your organisation, what you do, if you've got a physical asset, obviously. And then obviously once you've got them engaged, you've sort of got a bit of a captive audience, then you can collect that data, and then you can then keep in touch with them. So near the end, guys, I know we're sort of pretty much, oops, sorry, switch that off. So I am near the end now, you'll be pleased to know. Just not letting me move on now, page-wise. Where's that? Excuse me a minute, it's just not letting me move on. Right. There we go, top tips. So digital fundraising, just a few top tips for you there. Talking about if you are wanting to look at digital fundraising, what is it that you need to do? So just a few things, making sure that people can give instantly, clear call to action, creating an urgency, which I think the pandemic has done for everybody. If you're not registered on Facebook fundraising, then have a look at it if it's something that you think you could do. Leverage influencer relationships. So all those people I've just mentioned earlier that you've got in your organisation, leverage those relationships across social media and use them to promote. Move events online if you can, using live streaming. Get supporters fundraising for you if you can. Make sure you manage the data that you've got so you can see what data's coming in. If you haven't got a COVID campaign, I'm sure quite a few of you have got COVID campaigns anyway, but if you haven't, obviously we're nearing the end, but there's still opportunities there to actually look at that. Be vulnerable and honest. I think that's great when it comes to COVID. I think that's one of the things that's helped a lot of the heritage organisations is that they've shown their vulnerability and shown that what they do and the need that they've got for support and funding. And creating content, so looking at text and images and videos, and being able to share that on email and social media. So again, you will get access to all this. General fundraising top tips. The world's changed considerably because of the pandemic. So do think outside the box and be innovative. Share information, don't reinvent the wheel. Talk to each other. If other people have done it, then share it. You know, talk to them, find out what they've done and see if it's going to work for you. Most fundraising is built on relationships, so people will buy people. Think about all the different fundraising options. Don't just box yourself into one fundraising. Be personal. Appreciate and value everybody that supports you. Humanise your projects. Don't forget the what's in it for me question, which is what everybody asks. Why should they get involved with you? Plan, plan, plan. ATFQ means answer the flipping question when it comes to grant applications, so that people can see what you wanted the money for, and then use different types of media to promote what it is that you're wanting and securing support, whether that's traditional, digital, or both. So don't reinvent the wheel. As I say, there are people out there that have done things that would be really useful for you. So why wouldn't you want to find out what that is and share it with others to help them? So, you know, there are lots of other heritage organisations, even with the Sport and Heritage Network, you know, let's share things together. And there are lots of different documents out there. And there are some documents that I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes that I will send to you if you want them. This is one of them, Effective Fundraising, which is a really useful little document. It was free a few months ago. Well, it was free. It was a penny. You could, if you spent a penny, you could buy this book. The physical copy. They've now only got the download copy left, and it's £10 now, unfortunately. So do talk to others and think about what you're developing, and think about what others have done, and can you utilize what they've done to help you develop what you want to do. These are the useful search engines and sites and things to think about. So look at social media. Lots of individuals and organizations on social media that I follow at the moment. I follow the funders, I follow ALVA, the Association of Leading Visitor Attractions, I follow Heritage Alliance, I follow Museum Development Networks. Follow these individuals, because they, especially the funders, because you find out about the funding more often than not before it's on the website, because it goes out on social media. Sign up to e-shots. Look at all the different e-shots that you can apply, whether it's through Arts Council, whether it's through different trusts and foundations or community foundations. There are funding search engines like Funding Central, IDOC's Grant Finder. There's the Heritage Funding Directory. Community Matters Yorkshire is the organisation that's working with Justine, and Sporting Heritage has its own searchable funding database that you can use if you are a Sporting Heritage member. And also Community Matters Yorkshire has got a fundraising, an online fundraising fair in March. It's over 3 days, the 23rd, 24th and 25th of March. The first day is for Yorkshire and Humber funders, but the last 2 days are for national funders, and John's got some really big hitters. And you'll be pleased to know it's free to attend, though he does ask for a donation, and they're only a small organisation. So check out Community Matters Yorkshire, because they're really good. There's Heritage Digital that have got loads of information and support. There's Charity Digital, Global Giving, lots of templates for fundraising. Again, you're going to get all this information, but some non-heritage organisations that you might not have heard of. So NCVO, which is a National Council for Voluntary Organisation, lots of tools and toolkits for you to use on fundraising. NAVCA, the Small Charities Coalition, and the UKCF, which is the UK Community Foundations. And then there's a whole host of other organisations here. And when you get the PDF, obviously, all the nice hyperlinked ones, you'll be able to just go straight to the website. There are a few support programmes out at the moment as well for heritage organisations, which if you haven't already signed up, Rebuilding Heritage has reopened. And that's a free support programme for heritage organisations that are struggling. And it looks at a whole range of different things: fundraising, marketing, business planning. So again, you can check those out. It's run through Heritage Alliance. Charity Commission's got information with regards to trustees' responsibilities. You've got the Ecclesiastical Insurance Charity Fundraising Hub. You've got Heritage Digital, and then there's other things there as well. There's so much out there at the moment. I've probably just sort of blown your minds a little bit. So I am sorry, because I know I've sort of gone over, haven't I? 10 minutes. So I do appreciate, apologise for that. Has anybody got any questions? Because I know we haven't had a lot of time to ask stuff. I'm more than happy to ask questions if people are okay just to stay on. No? Just a few things then for you. I'm sorry, yes, Jeff. Yes, Jeff.
Yes, I'll give you a question. When you're making an application, once you've gone through the process and done, and thank you for all of this, there's some really good tips here. When you're making an application, is it conceivably helpful to say, to point at other examples and say, right, these people have done this. We're really going to model what we want to model what we're going to do on what they did there, because that would give people presumably a decent idea of what you're shooting for. I
think as the weight, and this is about how you frame it. So it's about you have looked at what others have done, looked at models of best practice, and you've done the research and recognise that actually some of these models of best practice that have been done in other environments would work well in yours. And what you're wanting to do is not replicate per se, but is actually look at something that others have done and utilise that knowledge and that skill and that experience to develop something within your own organisation. So it's how you frame it. I think, again, depending on the funder that you go into and what the funder is, what their criteria is and what they're willing to fund, it's if they see that you've recognised that there's a need, but then that you've also recognised that somebody else has done something that is sort of similar to what you want to do, then that's actually good practice, because what you've done is you've gone out there and researched that and you found out that actually that might work. You might have to tweak it and amend it, and that's probably why you would want the funding, is to make sure that it's going to fit with what it is that you need to do as an organisation. Yeah,
thank you.
And the other thing as well is, remember, with grant funders, they do want to give you the money. I know, admittedly, the pandemic has been a totally different ball game, but they do want to give you the money. So as long as they can see that there's evidence of need, that you're the best organisation to do it, that actually that you've done the research, then actually, and it fits with their criteria, then good to go. And again, if you can talk to individuals from that funding organisation before you do something, then that's better, really, because then they will tell you whether they think it's a goer. Most funders now will give you, the officers will give you a little bit of guidance.
Yeah, so they might, one particular example I had in mind was a heritage lottery funded project that a different football club did. So it would be quite good to know whether the HLF was pleased with the outcome or thought it was a disaster, if you're saying, right, we are going to try and copy them.
If you've got a good relationship with their development officers or relationship managers, if you know people, or just make that initial contact and say, I'd really like to have a conversation with you about something that I'm thinking of doing. I think at the moment they are very open to having conversations. I know they're all maxed out with the recovery fund, because even though it's a central part, they're getting involved in obviously the management of the projects that are successful, but they still want to know, we've still got to come out of it. So there's still going to be projects in 2021 moving forward. We're not going to be, as far as I know, this is probably going to be the last cultural recovery fund. So when we move out of this, there needs to be other resilience or other programs that we're doing to help the sector get back to a new normal. So, I think that initial conversation is something that's really useful. In addition to the slides and the notes that you will get, I have got a range of other useful templates and resources that some of you might be interested in, and that's my email address there, obviously. So I've got a heritage digital introduction document, which has information about digital communications, digital marketing strategies, digital tech and digital rights, and that's through the Heritage Alliance. I've also got a Giving Days calendar. So if you're planning projects or things that you're wanting to do digitally over the next year, this calendar's got specific dates that happen every year. Like we have National Black Cat Day or whatever. We've got all these different things. This calendar's got them listed at the bottom. So what you can do is think about, okay, we need a campaign to go out for this the month before. So I've got a calendar that's been produced that it's got notable dates on it that you can use. I've got 5 fundraising strategies for non-profit documents. I've got a beginner's guide to crowdfunding success document. And I've got a digital fundraising is now document, which basically talks about digital fundraising strategies and things that you need. I've also got a trustees and fundraising practical guide. Unfortunately, I haven't got the effective fundraising book online because I got it as a practical book for 1 penny. But if you did want to get it, you can find it on Directory of Social Change website, and it's £10 as a digital download. And then I've got some simple, just simple top tips sheets, and one about business development. It's more focused around your whole business, and it's called Simple Tips, Smart Ideas. And again, that's an ebook, so that's quite a lengthy one. But I'm more than happy if people would like any of those. If you want to email me, then I'm more than happy to share them with you. I think when it comes to things like fundraising at the moment, now's the time for you to do that planning and make sure that you've got all your research done, you've got your evidence base done. And if things that you're planning for have come out of 2020, then use that as your evidence base, and then think about where it is that you want to go and who you want to get the funding from, whether it is a grant funder or whether it's a donor or an investor. There's a whole range of things. Do your strategy, do your case for support to give you that bit of focus, and hopefully that will help. But hopefully these notes will help when we get them sent out. And I do apologise for overrunning, but trying to do this in an hour is just, yeah, slightly difficult.
Well, we're very grateful for it, Jo. There's loads of information there. Were there any other questions before we finish up? No? Okay. Well, thank you all for joining.